Hello everyone, my name is Rajiv. I'm an associate professor at College of Liberal Arts, Shanghai University, Shanghai, China. Today I'm going to talk about India-China relation, past, present and future. Before I begin, let me go back into a little bit history about India-China, what I call it civilizational connection. We all know that both India and China are neighbors and oldest civilization in the world, and both have fascinated each other culturally, even civilizationally over the past 2 millennia. Across these centuries, two great civilizations have continuously communicated with each other, and until recent times had been seen a very peaceful coexistence for over 2000 years, except in 1962, and then we have seen some border transgression in recent years. Now, what fascinated China? We have to think over, and that comes very naturally, that we have to see that what is that fascinate the Chinese most. And when come to India, in recent days, the Indian IT is one of the big buzzword in China. When we talk about IT, all Chinese have a very soft, and they are kind of like they appreciate the Indian rise in IT sector. But before that, we have seen a Buddhism disseminated into China in a Han dynasty during the 1st century AD. We have seen there are monuments, there are like buildings of White Horse Monastery to accommodate two highly proficient Buddhist scholars, monks from India. We have also seen, and we have also know, the history tells us that many Chinese scholars in search of wisdom and deeply motivated by the quest of knowledge undertook some of the most arduous continental journey to the India. And that journey, and we all know about the monk Xuanzang traveling from China to India during the and then visiting India, like Patliputra, Lumbini and all this. And then this journey of Xuanzang has been kind of converted into a fictional story that is one of the classic in China, known as A Journey to the West. And similarly, even the Indian scholars and teachers traveled to China, taught there, were revered, feted, and established themselves as a knowledge lighthouse. This movement of Indian scholar monks to China lasted for centuries. We have some of like a scholar like Kumarajiva, famous Indian monk, made valuable contribution to Buddhism in China. Now, on the Chinese side, we have known Faxian from 342 to 424, Xuanzang, that is known as Xuanzang, I Ching, are all well-known scholar monks who visited India. And then we have one of the greatest learning institute in India, known as Nalanda University during the 5th century to 1197. Founded by King Sakraditya. It was one of the knowledge center that attracted many travelers, particularly from the East Asia, who came here, studied there. Even the Xuanzang studied there and then also taught here. This civilizational exchange and interface thus began and was enhanced by centuries of interaction. In fact, India and China formed a formidable civilizational and cultural coalition long before the rise of West. We have not only these scholars and monks who have traveled, but if you go into the ancient India, then our celebrated epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata contains numerous references to China. The Mahabharata, in fact, refers to China several times and mentions, for example, that the Chinese brought gifts for Pandavas to have this Rajasui Yagya. Even the famous Arthashastra, Kautilya Arthashastra and Manu Smriti also mention about the China. Now, one of the scholar, we call it name as Tan Yun San, he was fascinated by India. He came to India and then he was very instrumental in India developing the Chinese study, and his son Tan Chung in his book In the Footsteps of Xuanzang, Tan Yun San and India, he very beautifully says that the two great peoples wedded to civilized living in the way of peace naturally find in the exchange of culture and truest expression of their time, their being. Not for them the covetous eyes of neither rapacious plunder nor territorial territorial aggression we have seen. And so that was the India-China relation in the ancient times. That was the cultural and the religious connection. We have also seen there was a trade relation between India and China well established even in the 2nd century, and that is mentioned by one of the Chinese historian named Sima Qian in his book Record of a Historian, Foreigners in Southwest, in a book. That the trade and economic and cultural exchanges between the two civilizations have been traced back at least to the Qin dynasty of China during our contemporary of Maurya dynasty and then Han dynasty in China. During this period, we have seen that the Silk Road was an important path for cultural, commercial and technological exchange between the traders, the merchants and urban dwellers from ancient China and India for almost 3,000 years. China traded silk, tea, porcelain, and India traded spices, ivory, textiles, and precious stones. We have seen there is a kind of we have a living example right now that if you go to the Dunhuang, then we can see a kind of replica of Ajanta and Ellora in China in the Dunhuang, where the many civilizations interacted with each other, and that was kind of that interaction gave to a new knowledge that we can see in China, we can see because the civilization thrives on the knowledge sharing. If we stop that interaction, then the civilization don't learn from each other. So, and then we have seen that this trade relation continued during the Tang dynasty from 618 to 907, then Song dynasty 960 to 1279, and Yuan dynasty 1279 to 1368. This interaction led many scholars to write volumes of articles and books on the exchanges between India and China and how it influenced the Chinese because they were the ones who were coming to India in search of knowledge. And one of the legendary historian of Asian civilizations, René Grosset, he says that even the name China is from Sanskrit word. That might kind of like be amazed or kind of wonderful to knowing that even the China name is given by India to the China, because if you see that there was a state in China called Qin dynasty, but legendary historian René says that it was not named after the Qin state, but it was the place in what is today known as Shanxi during that Changshi. So you have to say that even if you say that Qin, like in Chinese, it's written as Qin, that is the Qin dynasty. But when we write in Sanskrit, then we pronounce as a ch, that is become Qin. So that Qin became Qin, and Qin to became China when it's kind of like went back, travel back to Europe, and then finally Europe to China, because we have this we put extra a in the name, like Buddha became Buddha, Yog became Yoga. So that's, we can say that. Even other scholars believe that the Greek word for China, Cynthia, is also derived from the Sanskrit word Chinastan. Now what we have to see is that this interaction continued and we have long history of interaction between India and China. Like Xuanzang, in Chinese Xuanzang, we have also individuals like Rahul Sankrityayan who traveled to the Tibet in the search of lost Buddhist knowledge, and that there was a kind of like break between in this continuous exchange between India and China when the two countries became independent, or China called themselves as established in 1949. So there was again a renewed a kind of interest to revive this interaction and exchange between India and China, but the border came to halt or kind of hinder the progress. But nevertheless, when India and China got independent and established respectively, then we have seen that during the initial years, we call it India-China Bhai Bhai era or Hindi-Chini Bhai Bhai era. But that has also a dark clouds over the Tibet. But when the Chinese marched to the Tibet in 1950s, and then there was a kind of like not so good relationship between India and China. To continue this cordial relationship, both leaders from India and China, they signed an agreement known as Panchshil. What we know now, it has become a kind of a lighthouse of the international relation, that the Panchshil is. And there, from the Panchshil, we have seen that because it was essential that the two countries respect each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty and the China was like the India should not interfere in the Tibetan issue, so they signed this Panchshil agreement. And I don't need to go into these details about the Panchshil agreement. And then during this tense, we can say that tense situation where we have seen Chinese marching to the Tibet, and then the Tibetan Dalai Lama was in talk or pleading to even India, there was a series of visits made by Indian and Chinese leaders to each other country. In June 1954, Zhou Enlai visited New Delhi. Nehru paid a return visit to China in 1954. Again, Zhou visited in 1956, and then in 1959, Dalai Lama came to India. We can say that they fled to India, and then the situation became so tense. To ease this situation, again Zhou visited India in 1960 to cool down the temperature, but it was not as successful. And then we have seen that we have this border dispute arising between the India and China. But before this, the India and China into the new avatar, we have this British India had this agreement with China in 1913-14, similar agreement, but the Chinese don't recognize. They said Tibet doesn't have right to enter into any agreement, so they outrightly reject this agreement. And then you have this border between India and China and the McMahon line. So thereby this Chinese never formally recognize the McMahon line, and so there is a kind of a border dispute between India and China. And then we have this Aksai Chin, which is controlled by Chinese, and then we have this Arunachal Pradesh disputed. Chinese disputes this territory as known as what they call it Southern Tibet. Now, before I go into detail of this border dispute, we have to see that these border disputes are not in one sector. So for sake of studying, analyzing this border dispute, we have these three sectors. The one is eastern sector, Arunachal Pradesh. We have this middle sector in Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, and then we have this western sector in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. In the eastern sector, Chinese claims 90,000 square kilometer of territory, including our state of Arunachal Pradesh, what they call it Southern Tibet. In the central sector, our boundary disputes is along Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand of India, and then we have seen western sector, Aksai Chin, controlled by 500 square kilometer. And now we have seen this the current Ladakh standoff or stalemate is going on in this sector, in Ladakh sector. But there was an attempt to resolve this border disputes, and that was started with Nehru and Chou En-lai. Even the Chou En-lai is said to offer the package deal. Package deal means that was on the table that China will accept the McMahon line in eastern sector, while India should accept Chinese claim in western sector. Eventually, Chinese dropped this idea, so now there is no package deal, and Chinese kind of refused to say that there is a package deal. Now they are saying that there should be a kind of like sector by sector deal in eastern sector, and then we have in the western sector. So that's the package deal is no longer on the table. And during this period, we have seen in the border war that started on October 20, 1962, and then we have seen the all relationship came to the halt. We cut off our diplomatic relation with China, and then during this period, that was the period also we have to keep in mind, that was the period of Cold War. So in 1964, China tested nuclear. And so we have this, we also try to have this nuclear test in 1974. India signed a friendship treaty with Soviet Union in 1971, and we have seen that, and then there was also Chinese relationship with Soviet Union was not going so smoothly. So there was a kind of like a Cold War mentality going on. So the border war was there, a kind of like border talk went to the back burner, and we have seen some minor clashes in like Cholai incident in 1967, Sumdorong Chu is clash in mid 1987, then we have seen in Doklam in 2017, and then we have Ladakh in 2020. Now, so I don't want to go into after 1962 to 1988, that was a period where what I call it personally is a in terms of people to people contact is lost generation, because there was no exchange between these two countries in terms of like people to people contact or like economic trade, maybe a little bit a kind of a very minor exchanges between the two countries, but it all started to again gain momentum when Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi visited China in December 19 to 23 in 1988, and from there a kind of we have seen a momentum in relationship that we wanted to again revive this relationship, and then we have signed various instruments or agreement between India and China to ensure peace and tranquility along the line of actual control in India-China border. We have signed in 1993, then we signed another agreement in 1996, that is confidence building measures in military field along the line of control. Then we signed agreement on border defense cooperation in 2013. Before that, we have also signed modalities for implementation of confidence building measure in April 2005, and during the Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, I think it is one of the best confidence building measure and mechanism to resolve this India-China border dispute was to have this special representative talk on India-China border in 2003 that we have signed with, and that is already we are still continuing that special representative talk in 2019, and we have not seen in 2020 and 2021 for COVID and India-China tension along the border. Now, so that's India-China, the dark side of India-China relationship. But we have also some positive and constructive side of India-China relationship that is the Indian soft power that we tend to always forget, that is the Indian Bollywood, how famous Amir Khan in China is. We have to like see, or we have to examine that how the Amir Khan is famous in China, and but we have failed to translate this our gain in soft power into a kind of maneuvering and talking with the Chinese to gain certain positive vibes in a relationship. We have simply failed to translate this whole soft power or even civilizational connection between India and China, that is of Buddhism or for yoga. We are not yet able to transform or translate these soft power into a meaningful means to our maneuvering capability. So we need to have this soft power translating into in our gain, but we have failed because there are, like, if we see that how China is investing in soft power, if we see that the Chinese have opened the Confucius Institute around the world, of course that is under continuous attack or charge that Confucius Institute is a kind of a center for espionage. But that's a different story. But the point here is China is investing millions of dollars to get a soft side of Chinese power. But here we have this soft power in terms of Buddhism, in terms of yoga, in terms of Bollywood, but we are not able to do that. So we have to do that, and that soft power is not translating because we have a permanent irritant between India and China, that is the border dispute. So until and unless we don't resolve this border dispute, there is no way that we can move ahead in India-China relationship. Now let me tell you one more thing, that land is precious for both Indian and Chinese. And one other thing is that the both leadership in India and China, they both think, they believe that this one of the objective is to secure the territorial integrity, and that's true for any nation. They want to secure the territorial integrity, but it's also needed to both the leaders need to talk in a very peaceful and calm manner that how to resolve this crisis, because this is going to come over and over again, and we will see what we have seen that after the Doklam in 2017, we have Prime Minister Narendra Modi visiting China, President Xi Jinping visiting India. So we keep doing a reset in India-China relationship. In fact, what I call it, we are trapped into this reset business in India-China relationship. We don't need to do reset, but we need to have this overhauling the whole relationship. We need to kind of reorient the India-China relationship to make a meaningful dialogue. But that's easier said than done, because we have this strategic objectives and a strategic orientation also, because this is never in the history when the two countries which are our neighbors sharing the boundary rising and emerging simultaneously, because both India and China wants to become a superpower or emerge as a what they both call it, to revive their lost power. So both countries are trying to regain, and then there comes a kind of a strategic challenges to both countries to settle the disputes and continue together on the path to what Spanish says that Asian centurion. But again, easier said than done. Now we have seen that economic cooperation between India and China. We have roughly $100 billion bilateral trade between India and China, but this trade is not in favor of India. We have the trade is tilted towards China, that's favoring China, because we import more products than the Chinese. So this trade is also not favorable to us, and there is a lot of the Indian side is trying to convince Chinese to open up the agriculture sector and the pharmaceutical, because this is the sector, or IT, because these are the sectors where we have a strong capability to match the export-import imbalance in between India and China. But this again is again in dialogue level, not yet signed, or there is like kind of a very slow movement on this front also. But apart from this bilateral economic cooperation, the trade that also happened in 1991, that is one of the more, I think, one of the significant departure, or you can say that pillar in India-China relation, where we both are trying to explore the new dimension in India-China relation, and that was opening the border between India and China for the trade. And that we have seen in Lipulekh and Sipkila in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. Then we have also seen Nathula border for opening the trade between India and China. So let me conclude this presentation by saying that we have traveled a long journey from 90 minutes, what I call it, from 90 minutes to 600 minutes. What that means is, when Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi met Deng Xiaoping in 1988, the meeting lasted 90 minutes. But when Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping met, then that meeting lasted in Wuhan for 600 minutes. So we have traveled from 90 minutes to 600 minutes, and that we can say that the both countries were kind of trying to look at the problems, at the same time trying to resolve some of the problems. Then we have also seen that we have traveled from $1 billion to $100 billion in our trade relationship. That's not a very small feat, from 1 billion to 100 billion. Of course, that trade deficit is, the trade imbalance is not in our favor, but that can be resolved. We have also cooperated on very global cooperation level, like BRICS, climate change, G20, globalization, regional comprehensive economic partnership, AIIB. And then the dark side, or the other side of this relationship is, we have also seen the standoff from 7 days to 240 days. From Dalta Beg Oldi in April 2013 to May 2013, 20 days. Demchuk, 7 days, to Ladakh, that is now 8 months long standoff. So this relationship, what is a kind of like full of contradiction. So what I suggest to resolve this problem is, so if we see, there are like 3 problems. I call it 3 body problems: boundary problem, China, Pakistan, Tibet, and then we have a global politics. That is a 3 body problem, that one node is keep rotating. So, and then because of these problems, we have zero mutual trust on the BRI, on NSG, on United Nations Security Council, Quad, South Asia, Indo-Pacific, and India-US. And then what I suggest is 5 mantras for better cooperation. What? The first is sensitivity towards each other core issues. We need to have increase people-to-people contact, and then dehyphenating from India-Pakistan relationship into the Chinese policy making. Then we can move ahead in our bilateral relationship. Fourth, we need to resolve this boundary crisis, boundary disputes. Otherwise, it will keep coming into our relationship. Fifth is, we need to explore and continue our international cooperation on various platforms. I don't need to go into all the details because of the lack of time. And thank you for your attention.